Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
Welcome to our program. Last week our guest was Joanne Harvey, and she did a wonderful job discussing Education International, which was held in Brazil this summer, and we talked about that on that program. We have her back this week because while she was there, she took advantage of the environment and she did a journey on the Amazon River and also the regions around, and so we're very pleased to have her back. And for you who've never been there, like myself, we have some slides that we'll be showing that can give us an appreciation of the magnificent region and also how, in many ways, it's still so very much in its natural state. Joanne, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tony.
Pleased to have you here, and our guest is an educator in the Coeur d'Alene School District. She is worked in and is a member of the Idaho Education Association, the National Education Association, and serves as chair of one of the civil rights committees for Native Americans on that National Education Association. She's also the vice president of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations and a board member of the Human Rights Education Institute. She's deeply involved in education and concerns of people and human rights. And we're also pleased to have back Janelle Burke, who is our regular panelist, and she will commence today's questioning.
It sounds very interesting to go see the Amazon. Most of us have heard of that great river from the time we were very young. What were your first impressions about the river?
The river is immense. There seems to be no beginning and no end, and it's from the area where I was, you cannot see either side. I could not see either side. It's mostly all water traffic, and that's how you go, unless you're trekking through the rainforest, which I did too. But it's interesting because we came into the Amazon on another river, and as that river entered into the Amazon, the waters didn't mix, I noticed, for quite a ways. And eventually they did. But it's vast. I don't think people understand the vastness of the river.
Is it clear and is it deep?
It's not clear. I can't tell you how deep it would be, but it's dark. It has a dark color to it. And in places, the color changes, as I said, as other rivers come into it. Sometimes it will vary from a deep dark blue to a muddy chocolate.
And you traveled by boat. Now, what kind of boat were you on? I mean, how many people would have been on this boat with you?
Well, there were several people at the base camp, and the boat held approximately 25, 35 people, and you could take the boat and go an all-day trip, and that was what we had to do. The waterways are all the highways and byways, and many of the people that live around the rainforest, in the rainforest and near the Amazon, they have never traveled on anything. They have no boats because of the conditions in which they live. But basically, if you're taking a tour, you go on a boat, a water boat with a motor.
And you were on a water boat. You probably had a guide who explained certain things to you. But did you see passing boats? In other words, other boats going by? Was it a regular, almost like a boat highway?
Yes, but very few, and very few in passing at the time. There were probably other areas that it may have been more populated, but in the area where I was, which is near Manaus, that wasn't the case. You have to travel a long ways to get to the Amazon from there. But basically, the transportation is either a flat-bottom canoe or a boat with a motor, and the commercial ones are the ones with the largest motors. And the people that live there, as I said, they don't have transportation, but for walking.
And of course, you were there for about a week, and something that massive, you can't see a whole lot of it in a week, but and as you talk to your guide and the organizers of your trip, I would assume that it's one, even though you couldn't see the shore from the middle of the river, it's so vast, but along the shores of the river, I would assume that the people who live in that area stay fairly close to the water, that it's like in our own country with smaller, of course, lakes and rivers. like our own city here, Coeur d'Alene, it does develop close to water, especially back in history. Did you see the same thing with that, or was told that?
Well, most of the tribes that live there live on the tributaries.
Okay.
And they live back, and they're pretty self-sufficient. They are just now having some schools where they can take their children by boat. Someone will come and pick up maybe 5 or 6 children at a certain area and take them to a school. But basically, it seems to me, from my observance, that most of the people live away and up a tributary somewhere and deep into the rainforest. The guide that we had on this boat said that in the last few years they've discovered many, many more groups of populations that they didn't even know existed, and so they are deep in the rainforest.
So on this Mass River, there's many tributaries that go off to it.
Oh, yes.
And it's feeding into it. And
right.
So it's probably easier to live on one of those because this is such a massive thing that even weather-wise, I think, when it be more indicated from some of the photographs that we have that there's a lot of mist and all. It's not very clear days.
Well, we're so fortunate to live in an area where we have this wonderful dry heat here, and I'm not real used to the humidity and the mist and so forth. And so that occurs. And then there's rain, and there's a light misty rain that will fall at different times, and they don't notice it because they're used to this, and it's just part of the climate and the weather there. But I'm sure that's why in a lot of my pictures I had raindrops all over it, and something from the humidity as well. And a lot of times the cameras wouldn't work because of this.
Mm-hmm. The water is such a source of life. We know that in Idaho for farming and all. Are some of these water sources, or the potential for the future, must be just remarkable for energy production. Like hydropower and all.
Right.
Are they using that some for that around the larger cities?
Not much. We saw those further south, I would say, than there as I traveled throughout Brazil, but not in that area as much as what I expected. The preservation of water and the forest is a very, very much of a concern to the people that are native to that land, and they are very much against a real change. They know that things will be different in the future because they know about technology, and some of them, as I said, are becoming more educated. And the business of tourism has really taken over with them now, and many of the inhabitants of this area are not real happy with it. Later on, I think in the slides you'll meet and see a tribe that we went and met, and I can tell you how commercialism affected them.
Let's do that at this point. I'll say to our staff we have a total of 5 slides and photographs we're going to show, and they'll come up on the screen. And Joanne, these are not all on the Amazon, but they're in the region and the area where you traveled.
Right.
And so, but here's the first one.
Well, this is in the rainforest, and this is right off the Amazon. You can see that I'm holding a machete, and that's my protection in the rainforest. And that's a marvelous example of the underbrush and the growth there. That's a very huge tree, and it's called a walking tree. And those vines that you see hanging down are a source of water if you should be lost within the rainforest, and you can open one up and you would have pure water that you could drink there. And that was something that we wanted to know. I wanted to do a survival trip one day, and so I had a guide that took me into the rainforest, and that's what that is.
The machete, now you use that, sometimes you have to use it to clear the way you're going?
You might use it for clearing brush, you might use it for protection. There's snakes in there, and spiders, and all kind of critters. And you could, I'm a native hunter, and I could smell an odor as we were going, and I said, "What is that?" And the guide said, "Oh, that's a wild boar." And he said the same thing, "Don't worry, because they can hear us and they won't come near us." But it was wise to have a machete.
That's very fascinating. And now the next photograph is of a beautiful bird.
Right, that is. They're everywhere. And they look just like that. And this one liked me. I don't know, animals must know that I love animals, because this one came right up to me and I was able to feed him. And somebody walked up, somebody else came up, and he started squawking and went away. But these are plentiful, and they're everywhere, and they're just beautiful.
Oh, that one certainly is. Now the next one will be Breathtaking Falls, and that's not on the Amazon, but it's in the region.
It's
right?
in the region, and I think, Janelle, you asked the question about color. If you look at that the color of the water, the chocolate color, and it was after a rain, but these are falls, and these falls are spectacular. They're being viewed from the Brazil side, and they're in both Argentina and Brazil, and these are Iguacu Falls.
They're just really breathtaking. The next one is also equally impressive. That's Waterfalls.
The waterfalls, they're just beautiful. These are larger than Niagara Falls and wider. They extend for so many miles. And there is a walkway. You can walk all the way. And, while we were there, Tony, we were able to get out on a boat and actually go right out under these falls. And the mist was unbelievable. And if you can see right to the right, you'll see a little bit of green where the trees are. And then there's another area there. Mm-hmm. We pulled up under there, and then we went through them. And of course, you're all dressed with your. I didn't think that I would have pictures, mainly because it was so wet in there. And I had an opportunity to take these pictures, but they're beautiful, and it's just neat to be out there. I loved it.
So you can actually go under the falls. There's a room underneath to go under them? Or they're coming off?
Yes, you can go right under. And they come down kind of in stair steps. If you look in the back, you can see some in the back, and then you can see those out front. And your boat and craft will take you up as close as is safe. And the rapids are huge. I didn't think the rapids were going to be anything when I was looking at them before we got in the boat, but the rapids were huge. And in my Portuguese and Spanish, I found out, I said, are these a 3 or 4 or 5? And we could speak, uno, dos, tres, and we knew, and so he said, yes, cinco. So some of the rapids were real high.
That's been a famous sport from people from the United States and other places going and rafting on the Amazon. Mm-hmm. And the last photograph we have?
This was a wonderful afternoon. This is one family, and this whole family, you can see the chief there. He's on the side. He's the second gentleman with the kind of a little. He has a little crown that he's wearing. He was the chief, and then that's one of his sons and his wife and the children. And then those that have married some of his daughters, and of course the young children I loved. I had a great visit with them. They don't speak English at all, and they're pretty typical of the native tribes, with the exception that now that tourists are going there and Americans are coming by the dozens and Europeans and people from everywhere, they have learned that now they need to wear some of the Western dress. So if you can see, I got the biggest kick out of it. Some of the little boys had on, Speedos. And I was so surprised. They had on Speedos, not breechcloths. And then some of the women had on garments that covered their bodies. But there's typically there was, they wear native clothing made out of the plants and so forth. But this is a tribe. And they've also learned that it's beneficial to them commercially. They will sell handcrafts now and different things, but they were more than hospitable. All of these people, and probably five or six more that were out hunting to provide food for that night, live under one roof.
That's just fascinating, and thank you so much, Janelle Burke.
Well, it's tempting to ask you more about that family and to find out more about, do they live in one place? They're not nomadic then. They live at the same place. And they do daily food gathering?
They do gathering because they have no way of storing it. They have no refrigeration. They use water. Sometimes they have a cold spring or something that they can put things in. But they do daily hunting. They had chickens, and they had eggs and so forth.
Do they cook?
They cook over an open fire, right?
And do they also, then the women have a particular kind of duty that they do, and the men have another duty? Did you find that?
It was pretty typical. We talked with, there was one young man there that seemed to understand us better, and we had our interpreter with us, and he spoke the native language. But we asked that question, and we noticed that the wife of the tribal person, she seemed to be more. She seemed to be more liberated than some of the other women. And we would hear her in her language speaking as to what they could do or say. We got the gist, and from the body language we could tell.
So there was a hierarchy, you're saying?
Oh, I could see that, definitely. I could see that, yes.
Within the family. Now I want to ask you about the animals. You mentioned your love of animals, and you must have seen a great variety.
Oh, yes.
What kinds of things did you see?
Well, in the rainforest, they have the most beautiful, large butterflies. I was just captivated. And trying to get them on a photograph was amazing because they're just flitting all around. And you would see them going. But one of the most beautiful ones was called the owl butterfly. And when its wings were extended, you thought that it was an owl. It had the eyes, all of the wings made an eye shape. And that was beautiful. We saw all kinds of monkeys and gorillas, and they were very friendly. I think that the place where we were, you could observe them, but we went to a place where they also had them, and you could tell that people had fed them, just like here. And in one place where I happened to be, we had a little critter. In fact, I brought a little stuffed one because I was so intrigued. He looks a lot like our American raccoon, except it would have a much longer tail. And we were told that they might be in the forest at the time, and just not to bother them, that they would creep around and go away. And a herd of these things came along, and we called them watchies, and they did not attack me, but they must have loved me because they came up to me, and I kind of stood still for a while, and then I talked to them, but they were so intrigued by me, and they were standing all around me. There was probably 7 or 8 of them. And when I saw this in a store later, I thought, wow, I have to have a souvenir because I made friends with these guys. So I had this little pet with me all the time.
How big are they? About the size of our American raccoon?
About the size of one of the young of an American raccoon, with very long nose and a very long tail. And I could see that you could practically domesticate this little critter.
And then you mentioned the snakes, and I suppose a boa constrictor type snake of some type.
Well, they have all types of snakes, and they do have boa constrictors. The only snake that I really saw passed down on the ground by my feet, and it seemed to be going just, out of my road. It knew that I was there, and I just waited, and it crossed. And that was in the rainforest. But the monkeys were intriguing as well, and the other animals that we saw.
When you hiked in the rainforest, did you hike on animal trails for the most part, or trails used by animals and people?
I don't think that we were on animal trails. It did not, because I'm used to animal trails here, and I didn't see any sign that it was an animal trail. I believe we were off the path, and we actually I had one guide that was going to take me into the rainforest, and then he asked if he could bring 2 other people. They happened to be other women that were traveling, one from Australia and one from Massachusetts, and I said sure. So the 3 of us went with him, and we went in, and during the whole day we saw 2 other people.
Were you fearful of being lost?
Not at all. I was confident in my guide. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure those guides are well trained. Word got out they kept losing tourists. They would not have the tourists. I want to follow up on some of the same intriguing questions that Janelle had. You talk about that part of their livelihood is hunting, their food. And what kind of animals do they hunt, and what kind of food do they prepare from the wild game?
Well, one of their staples, of course, is the wild boar.
Okay.
That is something they have. And I was quite surprised that they almost all have chickens or a bird of some sort, but these look like domesticated chickens that I saw. And they use them for the eggs, and they use that, and I'm sure the rest of the protein. If necessary, they will eat anything that is in the jungle. And fish, the fish is outstanding. Those rivers produce the most wonderful fish, and I did not know the name of the fish, but I could tell because when it's cooked, it's opened up and filleted out, and the meat is just wonderful. So they eat a lot of fish in their diet. The people are especially healthy and strong, and you know, the color is good, and I mean, I was observing all the healthful physiology that I could, and they seem to be just, their diet has to be good. They have a lot of nuts, all kinds of nuts that they eat, and they don't have any of our snack foods. No. So I think that had to do with how they live.
Not all that sugar, but do they have a lot of greens too that they have to eat, or do they have any gardens, or it's all from the wild?
They eat banana leaves. They eat a lot of the leaves. They prepare different ways.
So they have bananas for fruit, for example.
Yes, and they have limes, and they have different types of things that come out of the water, like our watercress and so forth. They have, I would say, a very balanced diet.
Mm-hmm. And healthy and live long.
It appears to be from the tribe that we met and saw, and we never did get the right age of the people. But, you know, they probably were older than they looked, it was my guess. I would guess that because of their healthful living and the lack of stress and TV and jobs and all of the things that we put up with.
Every day is the very normal, basically, so there'd be a lot less stress level.
Right.
One other question before going back to Janelle. We've heard a lot in this country in recent years about a great concern of the destruction of a lot of the rainforests that have ecological consequences for the planet. Did you talk to anyone or see any, where you were, it sounds like it was really healthy, but are they losing, in some of the South American countries, are they losing a lot of the rainforest?
Well, that's happening in Brazil, and I was amazed. The most information that I was able to get from our guide, and I had more than one guide, and the most knowledgeable was a 27-year-old guide that I had who had lived in the rainforest and now was in Manaus and helping to guide there with the intention that one day he'll have his own services that he will provide to tourists. But he was able to tell me, when I asked him about that question, he said that in the rainforest there are many, many poachers. They call them poachers. And they are both not just for animals, but also for the wood products. And they are the ones that are illegal in the rainforest. And I had to ask immediately, do you know what countries they're from? And my next question was, America, you know, please tell me that we are not doing that. And basically he named the countries, and we were not among those, and I was really happy to hear that. But that is what's happening. They are there illegally, and some of their trees are outstanding. They're old, and they're old growth, and they're immense, and mahogany is prized. And so they're losing some of the most beautiful stands.
It's just like the drug problem, where they trying to catch the drug dealers, but is the government not doing an active job of trying to keep the poachers out?
They're trying. But as I said, the river is immense, and so is the rainforest. Okay. And the only way that you really get a good view of what it's like is when you're flying in or leaving, and you can look at the extensive land. And again, it is huge. I thought that it would be similar to perhaps one of our wilderness areas that we have here, but that is not true. Everything there seems to be endless and so large.
So hard to patrol.
Right, and because of all the tributaries, the poachers can go in, and they might not be detected, and then natives don't know what to do, because they are the people that don't understand what's happening. And now some of the tribes that realize that the poachers that are coming in to take the lumber and to take the trees are giving them certain gifts, monetary as well, and other things, for their silence. Okay. And they don't understand the whole thing. They know only about the area where they live and what they need to survive on.
Janelle Burke.
I know that some of our adventuresome viewers out there are going to be wondering, how do we get to do something like this? And I think there are other places throughout South America as well to visit. But how do you suggest a person who might want to go on a trip like this would get in touch with someone who could help them?
Well, Janelle, I've always had a to-do list, and whether it's at home, all my to-dos, and this is a would like to-do list because I have the other one too, but I had always wanted to go to South America. I was always intrigued with it. And people are what I'm sure draws me to any place that I go. The people are unbelievable, wonderful. I see in different travel logs and so forth that you can take ordinary tours and just book them from here. My intention was to leave from here and go and get to a place, and I wasn't too fearful of doing that on my own. I felt that I had enough language background that I should be able to talk to people. You can go on, as I said, established tours. There's all kinds around. And you can get on the internet and you put Brazil in, or you put South America, or you could put, Australia, or wherever you wanted to go. And then tourism, that's all they have to do is click on there if they're using the internet. Otherwise, a travel agent, anyone probably locally could do tours for them. But I think the thing that was so wonderful about mine was I did not have a set schedule when I left here. I had a general idea where I was going, and even though I had contacted several tour places prior and read all their materials, and I had studied maps, I felt that it was something very doable, and I knew that I was going to go ahead and get tour guides where I needed them. I'm not foolish enough to know that in certain places I probably needed to have a guide.
Now, last time I asked you some specific questions, some kind of favorite type things, and can you tell us what your favorite thing was about the trip on the Amazon?
Well, I think it would be the people. The guide and the energy that the guide showed us and the politeness and everything was just wonderful. The food was outstanding. The views and all of everything that we saw was wonderful, and it just, I think the culture of the whole area of South America is beautiful. I didn't just go to Brazil. I went to Argentina and to Uruguay also, and those were quick stops, but I thought as long as I'm here, I'm going. And I found everybody be so hospitable to me and so kind.
On that note, your other intriguing questions you have will have to be through eternity, a mystery as far as the answer is concerned. Joanne Harvey, on behalf of Janelle Burke and our staff, we thank you for this 2 weeks. It's been a delight and most informative, first of all, to talk about Education International and that conference, and then this remarkable trip into the rainforest, and you're kind with your time, and we also appreciate all the things you do and your volunteer work here and make this such a much more rich place to live. Again, good luck to you, and we hope to have you back at some future time. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us again next week at the same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart. That was just a...
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.